heaven and earth. We beseech thee to inspire and guide all our actions, so that we may always walk in the path of justice, love, and charity to one another. Help us with thy grace to do only those things that promote the unity, peace, happiness, and prosperity of Nigeria in general and Lagos State in particular. Amen. Good afternoon, distinguished colleagues. You are welcome to today's sitting. Let us quickly go through the votes and proceedings of Monday, 25th October 2021. Page 451. Sorry, please. 415, 416, 417. I have examined the votes and proceedings of Monday, 25th October 2021, and approval is here granted. Any message from the governor?
Right, Honorable Speaker, sir. Distinguished honorable members, there is no message from the governor.
Any other announcements?
Mr. Speaker, sir, there is none, sir.
Petition?
None, sir.
Matter of urgent public importance? None. Personal explanations? None. Reports? None. Majority Leader? Lane Foster. Lane, Honorable Rahim.
Good afternoon, the Right Honorable Speaker and the distinguished colleagues. I'm here before you this afternoon to lay report of the Committee on Special Duties and Intergovernmental Relations on a bill for a law to establish Lagos State Fire and Rescue Service and for other connected purposes. I so do.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, It's time for House of Assembly Bill number 42, the Consumer Protection Agency Bill 2021, supported by myself, by Honorable Adams NB, by Honorable Mrs. Miranda ML, Mrs. Shagodara MR, Honorable Yusuf AA, Honorable Tijani SO, Honorable Idimogun JE, Honorable Ogunkelu SO, Honorable Makinde RL, Honorable Raouf OA, Honorable Kasumu AR, Honorable Sahid WO, Honorable Abiru RL. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, I move that Consumer Protection Agency Bill 2021 be read for the second time. I so move.
Honorable Tijani. Thank you, Right Honorable Speaker. I rise to second the motion as moved. All in favor say aye. Those against no, the ayes have it. Mr. Kwap.
Thank you, the Right Honorable Speaker, sir. It is a great honor and privilege to read for the second time a bill for a law to establish the Lagos State Consumer Protection Agency, provide for the protection of the interests of customers, of consumers, settlement of consumer disputes, and for connected purposes. Thank you very much, sir.
Mr. Yusuf.
Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker, members of this great house. This bill is pro-people, people-rated bill that when passed into law, it will have an imperative tendencies on the people. Mr. Speaker, but before I continue, I have to give kudos to this very house because the law had been in existence before now. I remember vividly when I was the chairman House Committee on Transportation, Commerce and Industry. Honorable, the majority leader, passed the mantle of leadership to me when he was the chairman House Committee on Commerce and Industry. And at that very material time, he played a very active role in seeing that consumer protection law was enacted. It was a tug of war by then. But Mr. Speaker, today it was brought back that we should not only review it, we should repeal it and reenact it. Mr. Speaker, today in Nigeria, especially in Lagos State, hazardous products are so prevalent in the society, seriously to the extent that so many people have fallen victim of these bad products, substandard products, and the victims have not been able to have redress simply because the implementation of the former law was not seriously addressed to. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you today what we call soft drinks in Nigeria today, if we subject it to serious laboratory tests, we will say that about 95 of the content are sugar. And what is the implication of this? The implication is that we consume so much sugar and this leads to diabetes. It's so serious, it's killing, simply because nobody takes them to court. Nobody seriously addressed to what the law says. Again, Mr. Speaker, you will recollect that there was a particular man who exported some products to overseas. When they tested it, it's about 85% sugar, and they returned it. Up till now, this man has not been able to receive the compensation. We also witnessed in this Lagos State when some students fell victim of consuming bad hazardous products. Some of them died. Up till now, the parents have not been able to receive compensation or anything. But this law has dealt seriously on this. From definition to the last page, it has seriously dealt seriously to it. For instance, Section 1 of the bill expand on the court of competent jurisdiction instead of the court of lesser jurisdiction like a magistrate court. Now the agency will be able to initiate a very quick amount against any offender. That's an innovation on the former bill or former law. Mr. Speaker, not that alone. Now there's mandatory information. Mandatory information. If you are a manufacturer or you are a seller, you must be able to give details of what you are selling, from the content to the price, quality, quantity. All must be stated so that if you deviate from what you describe, the law will have its effect on you. Not only that, Mr. Speaker, again, you can see that people just break the law with impunity. I was with Mr. Speaker's party, and I know that party was organized. The DJ was giving adequate money and the rest of it. But the time of starting, then we will say the DJ will now start after the guests are seated and everybody is ready. Then we will not just say the Mr. DJ will say testing. This is breach of contract. It's breach of contract, and we should know this very well. It's very important. Then again, Mr. Speaker, even by biblical and Quranic injunction, go against short measure. What do I mean? When you get to market now, you will see that the seller has penetrated the model of rice, grains, and the rest of it. What do you see? They deceive you. This law addresses it. It addresses it very well. So, Mr. Speaker, as well, the other area which I have seen is where the recommendation of appointment of general manager for the agency. The general manager, they limited it to Ministry of Justice because they said it should be a state council. Whereas in the former law, it was not. It was opened. So anybody who is highly competent without necessarily being in the service could be appointed to be the general manager of the organization. So, Mr. Speaker, I feel this law is very, very good. It will have impact on the people of Lagos State if enacted to be the law of the state. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Good afternoon, Right Honorable Speaker, distinguished colleagues. I think this law is one of the law of the more reason why we are representing the over 25 million population of Lagos State. In a state where we buy mostly building materials, we see house collapse on every daily basis. Most of these things are not the fault of those people that really want to put up this building, but the effects of most of these unwholesome products were being traded in our market, culminated into some of these uneconomic loss. So if this law is passed into law, it's going to affect the economy of Lagos State positively, and it's going to increase on the consciousness, awareness, and advocacy of product that will be sold and displayed in most of our shops. And even the buyers, the manufacturers, will even have a customized label. They will even have understanding of what the goods are meant for. If this law is actually being passed into law as it is being recommended by the committee that is handling this product, it is going to create employment for people in the sector of the people in technological sector, people who are going to work with the manufacturers association in making sure that standards are being complied with. Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that when I bought this my wristwatch, I bought it, but unknowingly to me, there was no battery inside this wristwatch. You know, I felt bitter, I felt complaint, and that in a nation whereby you have been shortchanged, it is not only through corruption, it is not through defrauding of your fellow human being, that you are committing on economic loss to the nation. By selling products that are not meant to be sold, that are not meant to be displayed, that information are not attached to it, by paying for what you are not supposed to pay for. And this law is a law that is wholesome in nature, in a nation that it has taken care of the offenses, it has taken care of the penalty, it has taken care of even setting up an agency that will ensure that good things are being passed on to the people. I want to ensure the distinguished colleagues present here today that most of us are being victim and already victim of these unwholesome practices. If this law is given adequate attention, I think it will give reprieve to these people that has been duped in the past in the aims of selling goods that are not meant to be for consumer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to join my colleagues in giving my unalloyed support to this bill. I think the bill seeks to repeal the extant law and reenact a new law. And just a few observations on, in the interpretation section. The commissioner is defined as Commissioner for Commerce and Industry. But when you look at the bill, the Attorney General features more than the Commissioner for Commerce and Industry. Maybe it should just be included, Commissioner for Commerce and Industry and the Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice. Also, in section clause 2 on the objectives of the bill, I just think that a 2F can be added to say that the objectives to prevent unfair and unscrupulous exploitation of consumers and seek redress. Clause 11 and 12, like my colleague Prince, Honorable Prince B.C. Yusuf did mention, it is restrictive, so to speak. General Manager is said to only come from the Attorney General office. Why it will even be true that they should be legal practitioners? I guess it should be left that all legal practitioners should be able to qualify to do this. And 12, the joining of company secretary and legal advisor. We've spoken about it severally here that there are two different professions and should be separated. We always have company secretary everywhere. I don't know why it's always joining our own law. Also, when you look at clause 16 1B, it says that the agency can charge fund for its services, and what comes to your mind is that if you go to a police station and you go to complain and the police now ask you to pay for investigation, I think it should not be made elitist. It should be a service to our community and to the state in general. The fee should be expunged. Also, clause 20 that speaks about how complaints are to be made to the agency. It's also restrictive. It should be made open because for easy access. And I read somewhere that Mr. Tunde Erukela, who is of the Federal Consumer Protection Agency, also even received credible complaints from his social media outlet. And I guess our own should also be made open so that there will be easy access and to complain by the citizens of this state. Otherwise, I'm in full support of this bill. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this afternoon to also lend my voice to support this bill. However, before that, I want to make some comments about that there's an agency similar to this at the federal level called the Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission that operates within the Ministry of Trade and Investment, and they have their own complaint handling procedures and all that. And if we look at some submissions that have been made on the floor of this House previously, not today. There are usually issues come up about domesticating legislations. In this regard, maybe we should leave it just for the federal government to do. However, I'm of the opinion that the federal government cannot be on ground enough to monitor everything. So they need to domesticate this thing. Because if we leave everything to the federal government, I think that is just tantamount to being suicidal, and we cannot just be reacting after the slugs have penetrated. So also I would make the example of if we have the neighborhood safety corps that complements what the Nigerian police force is doing, which is very commendable. I think we should not just protecting citizens against violent crimes alone. We should also try to, uphold all fundamental rights that is due to the citizens. So, with that said, I think I am convinced that even if we are considering a pandemic, the effects of the pandemic that we're just coming out of, and things like that, when this bill becomes law, we should not say that we should not shy away from giving penalties to corporations that go foul of this law. So with that said, I'm in full support of this bill, and I think it is a right step in the right direction. Thank you.
Honorable LSHA. Good afternoon, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, honorable colleagues. I would also like to support this amendment to a 2015 bill, which was enacted in 2003. Then it was Consumer Protection Committee. Then in 2014, there was an amendment, 2015, and now this is a proposal for an amendment as well. This is a victims bill. It's a people bill, like Honorable Said mentioned. That is why we're here, to protect the interests of teeming Lagosians that we represent here, and this bill speaks to it. We have agencies that normally would arrest, sanction bodies that trade in Lagos, but the victim is always left out. You make calls on the phone, call drops, nobody pays you back, the call is not clear, you call in 4 or 5 times before you get through, nobody cares. You buy fake drugs, you use it, you don't get well, you now have to go back to the hospital. Now that may catch them one day, but you can't even find somebody to report to compensate you appropriately. So this bill is adequate and it speaks to all that. This amendment, I see, is trying to improve on the legislative drafting of the bill, which is very good. It also has created a more robust penalty and fines, introducing custodial service also into the penalties that can be given to offenders. Then it's also try to expand the powers of the agency vis-a-vis on sealing and sealing, which is the main essence of the amendment. Be that as it may, there are things here I think we need to pay attention to. First of all, the definitions. I noticed one definition there, so whichever committee is looking at this, they define state as to mean Lagos State Government. State is Lagos State of Nigeria. It is not Lagos State Government. So such things should be looked at, so we ensure that we stay within the ramification of that. The other thing I saw here, they tried to break in a tenure for the general manager. And in another section, they said, that's in section 11.4, for instance, they said the general manager and other staff of the agency shall hold office on such terms and conditions and may be in the appointment letter. Then at another place, they try to give them tenure of office as 3 years. I believe whichever committee is looking at this should look at it properly to ensure it is appropriate. They talked about the not holding of meetings as well. I think it used to be 6 times a year, they reduced it to 5. Maybe it should even go down to 4. We should please look at that. Then the quorum of the meeting, they had 12 members. Initially, I think it was 1/3. They tried to increase it to 8 members for a quorum. That may be difficult to get. So we'd like the committee, whichever committee that is looking at that, to pay attention to some of this issue. More importantly, there's a critical. I also joined Honorable P.C. Yusuf and my Deputy Speaker to comment on the General Manager, the qualification for General Manager and how he should be selected, whose recommendation it is. But what I'm more fearful for is a section 45 that was introduced. That section 45, I would like whoever is looking at this to pay attention to it. With the permission of Mr. Speaker, may I read? It says, power to give directives. The governor may give to the agency directives of a general nature with regard to the exercise of its function under this law, and the agency shall comply with such directives. I am sure this is well intended, but it is also a route to go outside whatever this law is. Because if there's a directive, whether it's in conformity to the law or along the general principles of the law, I'm sure nobody will be in a position here to decide which way that goes. So I think we should look at that carefully to agree whether we want to put that kind of statement within this law or any of our laws that would allow directives that would go outside the law to amend the law. That is my opinion. By and large, I think this is a needed amendment to bring the current law up to date, and I think it should be supported. Thank you.
Yeah, Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see this bill as enabling us in Lagos State to give more biting powers to the Consumer Protection Agency. The extant law has been used over time now, and because we are reflective in Lagos State, such that our laws are not cast in stone, we make it easy to evaluate the functionality of the law, the impact on the people, and ease of enforcement, coming back to either amend or repeal such laws and reenact. And I think that's what this bill is trying to do, to repeal the extant law, having used it over time and seeing some loopholes that have been exploited by those in the service world. The law has made some changes, critical changes into the perception of what the law should be. For instance, Mr. Speaker, we will see that the issue of jurisdiction, as said, has been addressed in the extant bill, in the extant law. It's like we restrict it to magisterial jurisdiction. But in this case, the jurisdiction has been enlarged to be law of competent jurisdiction, that you can even go to high courts, because some of the financial implications of the action may be more than the jurisdiction of a magistrate, and that will enable the agency to proceed so easily. Also, Mr. Speaker, the issue of service has been taken from hard copy, serving the hard copy of notices. It has been enlarged, the scope has been enlarged to like using telephone, emails, and the rest of that to effect services on anybody. Also, Mr. Speaker, the procedure for getting goods and services that are not properly in tandem with the interests of the consumers have also been addressed in such a way that originally the inspection officer can go on the property to inspect it and log complaints and see some copies. But in the current bill, Mr. Speaker, the function of inspection officer has been enlarged to even causing a distrain of the property where those goods are kept, where the person who owns or in charge of those goods unable to yield to instruction to remove and destroy such goods within some hours of grace given to such persons. We will see that this bill is trying to give value for service, value for product. If you buy a product, you must get the correct value for the product you are buying, not that you are buying something that is less valuable and you don't know. And it's to protect the consumer even up to the grassroots, for them to have a say, to have their rights protected, not protecting the rights of consumers alone. It is balanced, because where petition is made and investigation is conducted and property is distrained, if after investigation it is discovered that the person who owns the property or who owns the goods has not in any way compromised standard of value as alleged, of course such property will be distrained. So it's a balanced procedure for customer and for the consumers and those who are giving services or product. Mr. Speaker, it is like captioned by Honorable Yishao, an amendment that is so substantial to warrant changing the face and the content of the law entirely by coming up with this one, and it's showing that Lagos State is concerned with the interest of the people, in public interest, who engage daily in developing the commercial services, commercial transaction, commercial status of Lagos State being the economic hub of the Federation. It's a very good bill that once it is passed, it will change the face of things and will give the agency more power to achieve the desired objective of the law. And talking about paying for services, I think paying for investigation, this is a special investigation that will require laboratory investigation into the quality and the standard of goods so complained again. So it will require payment at those laboratories, and of course that is why I think that issue of fund has been introduced. But all in all, Mr. Speaker, the merit of this bill overweigh whatever little things we may see in it. So I think it's a bill that should naturally, scale the hurdle of the second reading for the appropriate committee to handle. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues. This bill is apt, and it seeks to ensure elimination of hazardous products in the state. Mr. Speaker, I wonder why we're experiencing so many cases of collapsed houses, buildings, and the rest of it. It is for no other reason but for use of substandard materials. Again, we also wonder why we're having cases of organ problems are prevalent in the society now. It is for no other reason but for consumption of carcinogenic products, hazardous products. You consume it and you start having cancer and the rest of it. And That is why I said this bill is apt. It seeks to address all of these abnormalities in the society. Again, what gladdens my heart in it is that it intensifies campaigns, lectures, advocacy, enlightenment, sensitization on substandard products so that the people can be more and more aware of what they are consuming. Mr. Speaker, sir, however, I want to look into the bill. If you look at the board constitution of the board, it mentions the chairman. It said the chairman shall have 15 years relevant field or profession and experience. To me, I think the 15 years is too high. It can be reduced to 10 years. Having 10 years of experience in relevant field and profession is not a tea party. So 10 years is better considered. And somewhere there, I saw tenure of office 3 years. I'm looking at if you can make it 4 years and renewable, it will be more appropriate. All in all, this bill gives teeth to the Consumer Protection Agency. It places it in the position of a bulldog that does not only bark but also bite. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. As a proponent of this bill that we have before us today, I am actually very happy about it. And one of the reasons why I'm happy about it is because it's a very, very useful bill at this time. So repealing the old law and however creating a new law to this effect is definitely worthy. Change, they say, is constant, and it definitely shows the proactiveness of the House in general. However, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I'll be focusing more on the merits of the bill. I'll start with the outline of functions of the agency outlined under the Clause 4. With this bill, it will ensure the speedy redress of consumer complaints through mediation and other means deemed appropriate. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, it will help and advise the state on consumer protection policies as the years go by. If you look at Clause 13, under the inspection officers, it creates a situation whereby you have a host of quality control officers who would actually get more jobs. It gives our youths more job opportunities within the state. Under Clause 35, under the offences and penalties, it exposes the criminal-minded persons who intend to sell expired or hazardous bad products, clamp down on manufacturers or sellers of same in terms of products that are hazardous to life, and of course exposes also the people who engage in unfair trade when it comes to consumption products. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, this bill under Section 35, Clause 35I, it further shows that it is to reprimand people who engage in unscrupulous exploitation of consumers. Deputy Speaker mentioned something about that earlier, that it should be embedded in 2F under the objectives. I wouldn't think there will be any need for that because it's already a part of the offences and penalties under this section. Under Clause 18, the office, when it talks about the office, though right now it is actually situated in my constituency on Allen Avenue as an operating office, it is particularly exciting to note that this will be sort of decentralized, such that it will be, you will have agencies, offices in the different local government areas within the state. It is a welcome development. However, Mr. Speaker, I would like to reiterate at this point the need for a sensitization process that will occur after the creation of this bill or this agency to the rural areas, because the concentration is within the rural areas where most of these adulterated goods are actually commonly circulated. However, in general, I feel like it will create an opportunity in the economic diversity of this nation to put Lagos State in the continuous forefront in terms of the production and the protection of people in general. So it is definitely a very apt bill that is very timely and needs speedy passage. Thank you.
Honorable Lumo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues. I want to say categorically that this bill is okay for us now, and to push the confidence in the consumers, most especially Lagosians, who buy things, sometimes or most times adulterated things. Now there is a law that we look at it critically and make sure that offenders are well punished. I've looked through the sections, most especially the functions of the agency. Very good ones, especially 4G that try to enlighten people, because they say there is no, ignorance is not an excuse. So the bill tends to educate and ensure that everybody is on the same page. Section 11, I want to share the view of Honorable Bisu Yusuf, the DS, and Honorable Bola Onshao on the general manager position that tend to limit it to only state counsel or a legal practitioner. I don't think that is good enough. Then Honorable Kashim just talked about the Section 18, which was already in the instant law that we are trying to repeal now, about decentralization. I think what we need, as a matter of fact, is to ensure that enforcement is ensured. It will not be right to have it located only on Allen Avenue. It should be spread all over the state so that it can have effective, its function can be seen and noticed very well. Then lastly, sir, the plus 20 on the complaints to the agency. Under the interpretation, there is no definition for what the concerned consumer mean. I think the committee that will take care of this bill should actually give us a definition of who a concerned consumer is. Of course, I know that this is in the extant law that we are trying to repeal, but I believe that it should be, put into this one. Thank you very much, Speaker.
Lastly, Honorable Jude. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, my colleagues. Good afternoon to everybody. I also want to add my voice on this agency bill. For me, I believe that the consumers, Lagosians, are the people that are going to enjoy the goodwill of this particular bill, because a lot of us who buy products and services from the sellers or the vendors most times are being cheated, and this one will give the consumer the right to also protest about this cheating that is going on almost on daily basis. However, I have a reservation on the issue of the chairman appointment, which is talking about 15 years, like mentioned by one of my colleagues. I think 15 years is a little bit high. From 10 years and above, I think we can have competent people that can man the position of the board as a chairman. Then again, when you look at the duration of board members, for me as well,
is small. 3 years for me is not good enough. The standard we have been using here, minimum have always been 4 years and above. So I believe probably the committee will look at it and maybe get back to 4 years that's expected. All and all, this bill will give us confidence. Even somebody like me will have more confidence to challenge a supplier, a vendor of every product. And it will also minimize the cheating that happens in the market in particular, mostly in Lagos State. I want to thank you. Thank you, sir.
The bill on Consumer Protection Agency Bill 2021 is hereby committed to House Committee on Commerce and Industry to report back in 2 weeks. Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, that is about all as is listed for this plenary session. And with your permission, I wish to move that the House adjourns. I want to move that the House adjourns to Thursday, the 28th day of October this year by 10 o'clock. I so move.
Honorable Mohammed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the motion as moved.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Those against nay. The ayes have it. This House stands adjourned till Thursday, 28th October 2021 at 10 a.m. prompt. I rise.